All right, hello everybody. This is Patrick Dennis with Synaptic Advisory Partners, and the video that we're going to be going through today is going to be a demo of how we can use Youreka and Health Cloud combined to address a lot of different challenges that we're talking to several different customers about as of late. And it's really all about enabling folks to, specifically Health Cloud users, to be able to manage certain types of health forms on the Salesforce platform. So a lot of times we're talking to people about how they're trying to digitize those forms and get them all onto the platform, as opposed to some of the other ways that we're seeing customers basically fill out patient and member forms today. And then we're also going to be talking about how you could solve the mobile forms use case, all using Youreka, again, kind of in tandem with all the different Health Cloud features. So quite specifically, as we're going to be going through this, you can see on the left-hand side, we've got this ability to, these are Youreka forms in the desktop browser, and then on the right-hand side, we've got Youreka forms on the mobile app. We'll be talking about both of them today, but when we talk about forms inside of Salesforce, this is really the kind of stuff that we're going to be that we're working with here. It's just filling out information and having it all pass back into Salesforce. So the demo flow that I'm going to be going through today is we're going to be starting from a Health Cloud person account. For those of you that are using Health Cloud today, you might be using the individual data model. Some of you might be using the person account data model. We're going to be using person accounts today. And we're going to fill out a form right from that person account's record. And this form that we're going to be working with today is it's just a PHQ-9. It's a pretty simple yet flexible form. So we'll save that, and then we'll review all the data back in Salesforce, and then we'll kind of look at what happened, and then we'll make some changes, and then we'll fill out the same form on the mobile app so that you can see kind of the similarities and differences between those two user experiences. But before we get started, I think it's super important, and I apologize for those of you that could care less about the data model behind the scenes, and you just kind of want to know how the forms work. I promise we'll get there, and I can even add a link in the bottom in the description that'll take you straight to the demo. But I think it's really important to set a foundation around the data model that we're working with here, because it helps us understand what's going on in the background when we're using these forms. So just a basic couple of components here for the data model in Health Cloud. We've got the person account, we've got the case or the care plan, and then in this case, we have a problem. So you can kind of see that those are interacting with one another, those different data tables. But what's interesting about Youreka is that when we add Youreka's forms into the mix, Youreka is, when you install our managed package, it gets added into your Salesforce org, and the forms are their own object. And so that object can then look up to many different other data tables, so that a single form actually has the ability to be related to many different records in the system at once. You can see here we've got a form related to a person account. We also have the same exact form related to the case or this person's care plan. And so it's really important to notice this, because when we think about the flexibility that this offers us, it kind of hints to the idea that you can have a single Youreka form that can update many different fields on many records at once. A Youreka form can be pre-populated with data from multiple records, and it can also insert multiple records all at the same time. So it's a really flexible way to insert and update data inside of your system, all without leaving the platform at all. That's kind of what the Youreka data model offers you. So with that said, what I'm going to do is just jump on over into my Salesforce org. And what I've done here is just put together a simple Health Cloud environment. So you can kind of see here, for those of you that have seen a Health Cloud demo, the most popular patient that you would see is this person named Charles Green. I'm just going to stick with that individual for the purposes of this demo as well, right? So when we're inside the Health Cloud console, we can see we've got the patient card on the left-hand side, all the patient details here, as well as all the fields for this particular person account. We also have a tab for care coordination, which includes the care plans, as well as some other components here. We've got the clinical data that is coming from all the EHR information, and we got some sample records in there. We also have the health forms, which I'll come back to here. This is all Youreka stuff in this tab right here. And then we have one other tab over here as well. But what we're going to do right now is when we sit on Charles Green's record, let's say that I am a user that needs to immediately open up a health assessment or a health form. What I can do is I can either look for existing forms that we might have for Charles, which would line up in a list here. In this case, I don't have any yet, so we're going to create a brand new form. So I immediately have access to a couple of different buttons here. You guys, again, for the technical folks that are watching this, these are Lightning components that come with the Youreka Manage package that allow you to flexibly create new form records on the fly. So in this case, I'm just going to simply click Create New PHQ-9, and this is one of the form templates, one of many that I have in the system that we might be interested in filling out for certain patients. Now, immediately what has happened is when we click on this button, this component down here populates with the Youreka form that we need to be filling out. So I'm going to pull this down here so we can see it. This is a brand new form record that's just been created, and what happens is it immediately is pre-populated with the data that is coming from the person account. So I can see the first and last name, date of birth, etc. So the first thing that I will show you is that all of these fields are going to map back to the fields across the org. In this case, we're going to be updating the person account with this brand new phone number. So if I change that from 5555 to 6666, what's going to happen is as soon as I submit this form, the person account record will be updated with the new phone number. But it's really helpful to have all that pre-populated in there so we're not filling out forms over and over again. We can just view this information for reference and then move on. We also have care plan information here. So any fields that I want to bring in from Charles's care plan could be added here. In this case, I just have the example one, just a couple example ones here. And then right away, we're going to get into some general health details that we should be filling out. So in this case, I'm already pre-populating the height and weight. But if we want to make those changes, let's say that Charles is only 70 inches tall. So we'll X these out here. Only 70 inches tall and 165. What we're doing here is this is just another feature that Youreka offers both on the desktop experience or on the mobile experience is calculations. So we can immediately do BMI calculations, for example, here, or anything else. We're able to do all sorts of arithmetic across different fields to give you quick calculations. Now let's move on to the actual PHQ-9. I'm going to get to the rest of this stuff afterwards. But this is the section where we're basically asking Charles about whether or not he feels as though he's down, depressed, or hopeless. So I just got a couple of questions here that we're going to answer. First of all, what best describes his mood today? It could be positive, neutral, or negative. So we'll select that it's neutral maybe, and then we'll answer these two questions here. So we'll say that he has felt down, depressed, or hopeless in the last month, and that he often has little interest or pleasure in doing things. Now what happens is when we select those two answers, we have some conditional display logic that is activated here. So only when those two are answered yes are we going to ask the next 7 or 9 questions, excuse me. So it opened up a whole new section for us. So I'm just going to go through and say, for each of these, the answers are various, but we'll jump around. Some of these are several days, and then some of them are more than half of the days. So you can see how we're able to open up a whole new set of questions here just based on answers to previous questions. In this last case, thoughts that you'd be better off dead. Maybe in this case, we want it to have a special response here because this one's quite a bit more serious than the others. So we could say, do the response in question 9. It's imperative that you contact a medical professional immediately. So go check out the primary care provider here on the plan or on the person account and make contact. Or, whatever we want that text to be. But the important thing is that we can open and show different sections here to really guide the user through their process and make sure they're set up for success. And then finally, maybe we'll just say, to this last question, it's somewhat difficult. So that is kind of the overall overview of what it would look like to just easily kind of fill out all those different questions. There's two other features here I'm going to show you before we push this before we click submit, I should say. The other thing here is that we have the ability in Youreka to pull in related records. So in this case, in the EHR data model, we had 2 patient medication records listed. We can actually pull in related lists for Charles in this case right here. So let's say we wanted to just observe the medications that he's taking, and these are coming from the EHR. We can open up these different sections. I have these only as read-only because we probably wouldn't want to edit these on the fly, but if we wanted to, I could easily make these editable for any of the related lists that we wanted to pull in, and then we can make changes here. And then as soon as we click submit, those changes we made to the medication records too. Final thing here is maybe I want to create a task, so I can open up a new task section here and just say follow up with Charles, and maybe we want to do that tomorrow. So I'll just say the due date for that is tomorrow, and the owner is me. And there we go. So now we're done. So we've edited some information, we've filled out the whole form here, and we're going to submit this form back to the record here. The other thing I'll show you before we do that is that we do have the ability to kind of have different navigation here. We talk to a lot of customers who say that some of their forms are extremely long with lots of different sections, lots of different questions, and so the conversations are not typically linear. So maybe it's helpful to be able to jump around to different areas. We can do that here with Youreka's navigation menu. So here I'll just click submit, and when we do that, the form record is going to be saved. And then right away we're presented with the completed form with all the answers and responses that we had typed in originally. And these are saved to Salesforce now, so we can always go back and view this form as it's an individual record. We also have some discoveries. I'm going to take a moment here in a second to talk about what discoveries are. But we can see here we've calculated a depression score, and we've also added a problem to Charles's care plan based on some answers to questions in the form. So I'm going to come back to those discoveries, but quickly, when we close this out, I'm just going to quickly refresh the page here. And what happens, I want you to quickly see that updates were made to the specific fields on Charles's record. So for example, the one that we changed was his mobile number. So we added those from 555 to 666. So we updated the person account record with the form. If we would have made changes to the clinical data from the medications, those would have been updated as well. In this case, we did not. So, but it's interesting to know that they could be pulled into the form. And then finally, we can actually see the form that's been completed here. Now, that's in the existing forms list. And so we could have a whole stack of forms here that have been filled out over time, and we can understand when they were filled out. And then all we need to do, if we want to look at them, is just click on that little eyeball right there, and it'll pull up the form again in this little web component that we have here. So it doesn't matter if we only have one form filled out here for Charles or if we have 10, we can just click on the different eyeballs and it'll open up all the different forms right here on the record. So you can do all this without leaving Charles Green's person account record. It's very, very easy to do. Now, here's the other thing that I will say is I want to go back to this idea of discoveries because I think it's really powerful, both for making calculations as well as other automation in the system. So let me jump back to my slide deck here just to give you a quick overview. So discoveries are their own records inside of Salesforce. It's an object that comes with the Youreka package along with forms and everything else. So they are records that get created immediately after a form is saved, and they're generated only when certain answers are answered in a certain way. So we set up the criteria when we build the form to say question 1 was answered this way, and question 2 was answered this way, and question 3 was answered that way. Because of that criteria was met, please create a discovery for me. And they can also be used to generate scores. So you can see here on the right-hand side, we can calculate the different score. We can give different weights to the different questions inside of the form and calculate a score there, and then use that score wherever we want inside of Salesforce for whatever purposes we might need them for. So that's what discoveries are good for. So in this case, what I've done is if we go back over to Salesforce, we have that depression score here, which is also reportable. But in this case, I'm going to go over to Charles actual care plan record that we have inside of Salesforce. And what we'll notice is that I've actually created a problem record here in the system that now our care team and our care coordinators can review, and maybe they can status it out, or maybe they can consider it a very serious issue that needs to be addressed with Charles directly. But the point is that that problem record was generated automatically just as a result of us filling out the PHQ-9, and then we can do whatever we want with it from there. The other thing that's important to note before I jump over to our next use case is that, again, because the data model is so flexible, that same form that we filled out on the person account record is also available right here on the care plan record too. And it's because we work within such a flexible data model. So if you have your teams working off of care plans, then have the forms render right here on the care plan. If you have your care teams working off of the person account record, you could render off the person account record. So we're very, very flexible in terms of where these forms can be manifested inside of the system. But the point is that they can be shown in either case. Okay, so that was what discoveries look like and us creating a care plan problem. Now, what I want to show you at this point is how these forms are actually made. So what we can do inside of the system is actually go to our Youreka app here, where we have access to all of our different form templates. And so I'm just going to click on the Form Templates tab here. And we can see we've got a whole list of all the different templates that we have. I've got quite a few here for other demos that I've done. But we'll click into the PHQ-9, which is what I just filled out now. And let's say I wanted to add a question or create a new set of questions with our drag and drop editor. All I need to do is just open up a new version here, and immediately I'm greeted with the Youreka Form Template Builder. And so this is the place that we can go to generate new types of forms or edit existing ones. And so in this case, I'm just going to say that this is version 1.1 because we're making an edit here. And so these are all the different questions. And as you can see, some of them are mapping back to the person account. Others are mapping over to the care plan. But here, maybe I want to ask another couple of questions. So I'll just drag a question onto the canvas here. And I'll say, what is your marital status? And then immediately we can kind of just go in and see all the different question types that we are offered here. So I'll just have a radio button that says single or married, just to keep it simple. And then I'll add one more question here and say, what is your spouse's name? And here we'll just leave this as free text, but I only want to show this question when somebody answers that they are married. So this is an example of me adding a couple of questions, but then also creating conditional display logic. And so if we go ahead and just save this form and preview it, now I can go in and see that that new question has been added. And then the second that I select married, now I have the ability to type in the name of that spouse. So it's pretty easy for us to make edits to these forms and then deploy them out to our users. So in this case, I'm satisfied with the way that that form looks. I'll just quickly publish it, and then right away it can be made available to our users. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this part of the demo on my mobile device. And so if we just open this up for a second, let me see if I can bring in my mobile device here. So this is what the Youreka Mobile App looks like. It's just an app on the iOS or Android store. And when we open up Youreka, immediately we log in with our Salesforce username and password. And then I can see all the different form templates that are available to me as a user. And so right there, you can see there's the PHQ-9 version 1.1 that we just created. And quickly, I'll just go find Charles Green's care plan in here. And when we do that, let me just fill this out here. We'll open up the form, and right away we can see it's the exact same form that we were expecting earlier. There's our conditional display logic has been set up. And this would be an example of if we were actually going into Charles's home to do this health assessment, as opposed to doing it over the phone and using our Salesforce desktop UI as an experience. But the point is that the entire thing works the exact same way. You could just simply fill out these different selections here, and as we go through the form, it looks identical to what it did on the desktop experience. And this, remember, is just a brand new form record too. So maybe this is us filling it out 2 weeks later or a year later. And then right as we do, all we need to do is just submit that form back to Salesforce. And then the same way that it worked before is we can just go back to Charles Green's record. Just quickly refresh my page here. And when I go back, I can see there will be a second form that has been added to Charles's page here. So we can see the existing forms. There's the PHQ-9 and there's the PHQ-9 version 1.1 that was filled out just a moment later. Again, we can click on either of those and observe them right here inside of the system without having to leave the record at all. So that is an example of us using the template builder to make edits to our forms, as well as the mobile application if we wanted to go out into the field and do an assessment of Charles from Charles's home or anywhere else. The final two things that I wanted to show you were that if we wanted to open up these forms and generate PDFs, we can do that. So the way that is done is you simply open up the form record here in Salesforce, and then there is a gear icon in the top right-hand corner where we can generate a PDF. This will download it from your browser, and then you can do whatever you want with that PDF, whether it be print it or share it, email it. Anything can be done at that point, but we give that functionality to you right here by just generating a PDF. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to show you was the reporting capabilities. So if we open up reports here inside of Salesforce, I think I've got one already set up here. It's called depression score analysis. And so this is an example of, in this case, I've been doing it all on Charles Green's record. But what we can do is, because all of Youreka's objects are native to Salesforce, we can run Salesforce reports and dashboards off of them. So here you can see that we were creating those different discoveries of depression scores, and these are the actual scores that are being added up as a result of those different questions in the PHQ-9. And so maybe this would be 4 different patients or members, or it could be 100 or 1,000. But the point is that now you can start to really report on and slice and dice data based on depression scores that are coming out of a PHQ-9 or any other scores from any other types of health assessments. So the reporting capabilities are fairly strong as well when it comes to the data that's coming from a Youreka form and being passed onto different objects in Salesforce. So that is all I had prepared for. Looks like I had one more slide here for the template builder. The last thing I'll leave you with is I would be very curious from anyone who's watching this video around if anybody is using ICD codes or care plan templates or care plan template problems. We could very easily tuck some of the technology that I just showed you right here with these records inside of Health Cloud too. So for example, we could start associating discovery types with ICD codes. We could start associating discovery types with care plan templates and the problems that go with those to really, at scale, start adding problems to care plans based on form responses, as well as start coding the different discoveries that we are generating from forms. There's a lot of power and flexibility that comes with having these forms generating automation in the system as a result of the responses in the forms. So this has been what it's like to use Youreka alongside of Health Cloud. You guys, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us at youreka.io and contact us or let us know if you need any help with an implementation that you're working on right now. But hopefully this has been a helpful presentation for you. Thanks.